Good morning and good afternoon. We are so excited to have Zech Feng back with us. Zech is in Dallas, Texas. Last Saturday, we had a really good time learning about Zech, how he grew up as a teenager from a Christian family. He was born in Kansas. He's an ABC, like many of you here. And he's been to multiple states from East Coast to West Coast and Central and all in between, including Southern California, where I am, Pennsylvania, San Francisco in the Bay Area, and now he's in Dallas. He was also in Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. So he got his undergraduate from UC Berkeley in Bachelor of Arts in Economics and Policy. And then he went to law school. Now he's a lawyer. He shared with us the different legal role that he's done with the government and private corporations. And he also shared how he struggled in his college years. And through that process, Zech came to own his own Christian faith. It's no longer his parents' faith, not his grandparents' faith. It's his very own faith. And he learned how to trust in God. He's very active in serving at the same church as Teacher Ming in CCCFC in Dallas. And he also hosts a high school home group with his wife at his home. And he's a self-proclaimed nerd in all these games that you probably know a lot better than I do. I don't honestly know many of these games. And he loved college football. You can see in his background in the picture, Go Bears. And also NFL fantasy football. And he loves cooking with his wife. So now we're gonna let Zech continue and do a brief recap on where he shared with us. And many of you did this homework. And we went through this 5P, and Zech was so gracious during the 5P to reflect on his life. So please, Zech, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Elaine. Thank you for that recap. I'm very glad to be back to share a little bit more. I guess the first thing I want to do is just kind of do a very quick review of my attempt at this 5P pyramid model. I'll start at the very bottom, the foundation for the purpose. I view my purpose in life to grow closer to Christ, to live a life where people can see that I am a believer and I am making those efforts to grow closer to Christ, be more Christ-like, and to have some kind of impact on those around me. And I view that as not necessarily a huge global impact. I don't have to be like a Bill Gates or an Elon Musk, but as long as I've had that an influence, a difference for someone, I would be glad with that. Going up the next step, well, what principles do I have to work on those purposes? The first thing I have to go to is God's word, the Bible. That has to be the groundwork there. And then I have a strong sense of responsibility and ownership, owning up to my own decisions and the results or even the consequences of those. And then I always strive to maintain a work-life balance to keep that, keep myself sane for the most part. What are my passions that I like to do during my time? Well, music is a strong passion of mine. It started not as a passion. It started more as a parents made me do it thing starting back in junior high. But over time, it's really grown to be something that I love to do. And I'm glad to say that I can use that as part of my service in the church as well. I desire to build a strong family. I'm still young in that process. We've only been married for 2 years, but it's my goal to establish a strong family. And of course, as you saw with the last note that Elaine shared, I like to have fun. I enjoy games and entertainment. And I think that's a great part of just having a balanced life. So on the external side, how do people see me? How do I interact with the outside world? With other people, I find that I'm usually pretty patient. I try my best to do that. Part of that is also having good listening skills, making sure that you're listening when other people share. That demonstrates you care about them. And through that, they know that you are investing in them and listening to their issues. And just being committed. If I make a decision to do something, I always want to make sure I follow through. So that doesn't mean I think carefully about what I decide to do, but it's a great demonstration to people around you when you're able to commit to things and stay on that path. And then what do people see out of my performance? I guess these are kind of the surface level descriptors, the very top level of what people would see if they looked at my resume or my life story. Well, my career, I've been an in-house attorney pretty much since I graduated. I worked in schools with the state government, and now I'm working at a semiconductor company. Academics, I was able to go to UC Berkeley for my undergrad and to University of Illinois for law school. And I put down the state bar because that is a big exam and a huge hurdle. So people like to know that. In the church, I get to serve on the worship team. Like I said, putting my music passion to use. I am able to serve with the youth ministry. I get to work with the high schoolers. And just yesterday, we hosted a Friday night group at our house. And it was the first night where the new ninth graders got to join us. And it was a huge group. We all had a bunch of fun. It was a little crazy night. There are so many people here, but it was so awesome to see these kids coming together. And I also have the opportunity to serve the church as part of the deacon board, making the bigger decisions and just helping to represent the people there at the church. And then I also strive to do a daily devotional, and I'm working my way through a Bible in a year chronological order kind of system. And that's been very interesting to read the Bible in that way. But yeah, that's the very quick review of my 5P model.
Wow, that is so rich. That tells us so much just in the few minutes. So since Teacher Ming and Pastor Lee weren't here last time, feel free to chime in or ask some questions, especially Teacher Ming knows Zach personally.
Sure. Yeah. Now I think at Zach, I have a brief interface with him once in the deacon board meeting. I think we're in the heated discussion. Then amazingly, I observed him as a very young Christian. I think his maturity is really, really impressive. He pretty much just listen until everybody getting this heat discussion with no really final conclusion answer, and then Zach starts to pick up. Okay, and then they say, let's stop talking about the you say, I say, he say, we say. Let's just focus on the conclusion, focus on God's words. And I think that was pretty impressive to me. Yeah. Again, he worked in the dial for about 5 years. So I'm really interested. Last time I was out of town. I'm really interested in listening. He's sharing about what does lawyer do and what's life like. And so that can help the youth decide to say, oh, this is a job I like to do. This is a professional career. Match my passion very well. Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. So Teacher Ming's sharing of that interaction, already it's an excellent illustration of what Zach shared in the people section. He truly is a patient and a good listener. I imagine that's a critical skill for being a good lawyer. In order to make your case, you need to listen and think from their perspective, where are they coming from and what is their end goal and how can we meet somewhere at the right location. That is powerful. Pastor Lee, any comments or questions from you?
No, that's okay. I'll wait for the next turn.
Great. And you also notice that Zach, it's really quote unquote multi-talented. I believe he started with some STEM interests, science, and then he studied economics, and then he's musical and he played games. And of course, with lawyer, there's a lot of reading and writing, liberal arts section. So I believe he's both strong in left brain, right brain. Would you say that, Zach?
I don't know the distinction exactly for left and right brain and all the details, but sure, I like to have interests in different places. I believe it's good to have your hand in a little bit of everything here and there. It also helps you better connect with people if you're able to go in those different areas.
Good point. Pastor Lee is actually a doctor. He's a physician, anesthesia. So maybe you can explain the left brain, right brain. Would you like to, Pastor Lee?
That is not my field. So and as far as I read, that has not been proven to be correct either. So I won't venture there. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just do a brief sentence. I'm not an expert, but I know left brain tend to be the logical, science-based type activity and interest. And the right brain are usually the artistic, musical, is the typical. So you seem to have both. So let's get to know Zach in a more personal level. He again was gracious to do the swap tool that I shared in the first few weeks of this youth camp on Zoom, so we can all get grounded and get to know ourselves better. So please, Zach, go ahead.
Do I just start in the upper left and kind of go around the numbers?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. So I tried to identify my strengths, and I spoke on this a little bit last week. In doing this process, I was kind of rediscovering, who I am. What am I good at? What am I bad at? So I'm really glad that I was given this opportunity to flesh this out. It was a good exercise for me. So what did I think my strengths were? Logical thinking and writing, and that kind of comes in with my profession and the schooling that I had to go through, because law school really helps kind of teach you how to think about things, how to approach things. So logical thinking and writing. I mentioned I believe you have to be a very committed person. So I think I am responsible and committed, follow through, self-discipline. That's part of the commitment in order to make sure that you get things done, do the things that you promise you're going to do. Not afraid to get up in front of others. People talk about stage fright, right? Whether it's for a performance or maybe you just need to speak up and say something. And I had the same thing. My heart would be pumping so quickly. And it wasn't until probably law school that I finally got over that, because you're forced to get up in front of people and make arguments and lay out logical thinking. And doing actually in those years when I was doing church service and I was getting on worship choir teams, that also helped me kind of get over that general fear. So now, for the most part, I'm not afraid to get up in front of people, or maybe, people ask for volunteers to demonstrate something or to say something, and people are always very shy about it, or they're afraid they're going to get embarrassed. I generally don't have that hesitation as much anymore, because, it's for everyone's betterment. People aren't out to get you. So it's a good thing to be able to step up to that. And whenever we talk about, well, what are our spiritual gifts in church? Faith always comes out very on the top for me. It's part of being, I think that flows from the commitment and self-discipline as well, but just having a strong sense of faith in what I believe in. And I think that's just a very great foundation, something I'm glad to have to build upon. All right, so those are what I perceive as my strengths. What do I perceive as weaknesses? A lot of times I try to be a perfectionist. I try to do things very detailed. I kind of want things to go the way I want them to go. And if they don't, that can cause a lot of issues, emotionally, the way I relate with people. So perfectionism, while people might see that as a good thing because you're like, oh, you're doing things so well, so detailed, it can be a strong weakness as well. Oftentimes I find myself being risk averse. Sometimes I like to settle into what's comfortable, and I have to really challenge myself to go beyond that. And not good at initiating contact. What does that mean? Well, I do enjoy talking to people. I find that I can probably make pretty good conversation with them, but I'm very bad at starting the conversation. If there's someone new who shows up, it takes me a while to work up that nerve to initiate that interaction and discussion with them. If someone brings them to me, if someone does that initiation for me, I am great at following up with it. Or if it's my job and I have to do it, like if you're in court, I have to get up in front of a bunch of new people I've never met, a judge I've never met, and talk to them. It's my job. I'm great at doing that. But if it's just a casual initiation, I tend to not be so great. So that's probably one of my weaknesses there. Moving down into threats. So I kind of saw this as the exacerbation of the weakness, and where can that really break things down for me? That's what I kind of tried to interpret that as. So from perfectionism, I turn that into controlling. If I start wanting to take a handle on everything must be the way I want it to be. I need to be right about everything. That can really destroy relationships. It can destroy what you're trying to do. Everything can fall apart from there. And that I've seen that in church service as well. If I'm trying to control everything on how the service is run, how the AV sound system is done, I might have all these thoughts in my head, but if I can't let go and let my team do it, the whole thing's not going to flow very well, you know? And especially a need to be right. You have to let go of that when you are married. Well, when you're in a relationship, you can't let your own desire to always be quote unquote correct control everything. Oftentimes, because of my logical thinking, which I identified as a potential strength, I feel that I might not be empathetic enough with other people, understanding where they're coming from, because I might be thinking, oh, but you should have done it this way, or this could have happened that way, you know, X, Y, Z. But I have to remember and remind myself, it's not about how I think it should be done, or even how I objectively perceive something should have been done. It's about what the other person is going through at that moment. And oftentimes I don't find myself in that mindset. So that's definitely a threat. And as we're doing a lot of work, as we are going through a lot of different struggles and hardships, especially in the past couple of years, there is a risk of burnout for myself. You know, I take on a lot of things that I want to be able to help in, and I feel like I can help in. And like I said, I'm trying to be committed and follow through on everything. And as I'm doing that, I might take on too much, and then I might burn out. And then that is no good for anyone at the end of all things. So those are the threats I feel in my life. Well, what are the opportunities I have in this lower left? Well, to work on initiating contact, my weakness, I can work on my communication. I can work on being a better host, better at welcoming people, better at interacting with people. And that's definitely something that we are challenged to do at work and in the church context as well. For alleviating this need to be right, for being more empathetic, I really think family opens up opportunities to work on those, especially my relationship with my wife. You know, I can't always be right in every discussion I have with her. I have to be able to identify where she's coming from. You know, she's doing her own struggles. She's also at the risk of burning out on her own things. How do I care for her in those areas? And then, of course, in the church service, how do I lead and care also for my ministry teams? Because as I'm working on worship, there's a bunch of worship members who I have to lead. And how do I care for them? How do I lead them? And how do I care for the rest of my community? Just because we're in a church doesn't mean everything is rosy and perfect. We are still people with that all have our own little issues, right? So how do I be empathetic with them? So those are opportunities opening up doors for me to work on my weaknesses and my threat areas. Is that right? Did I cover that right?
Absolutely, perfectly done. And just thank you for being so transparent, vulnerable, and honest in your own assessment. And as you probably can appreciate, this tool really help you to flesh out and reflect on who you are and how you interact with other people. So your top is the internal assessment and way of doing things, and your bottom is your external interaction with the outside environment and people. And you just shared it so well. Thank you so much, Zach. And this is an incredible tool. You can then perhaps ask your wife and other coworkers and others to give you like a 360-degree assessment in terms of how they may view and they agree or not agree, and perhaps even more meaningful discussion. And this also serves as a tool to track my progress over time, from this year to last year compared to the future. Yes, Teacher Ming.
Yeah, I think for this grade, analysis and understand yourself, then I like to go back to the professional perspective. Okay, so with our SWOT analysis, because we pretty much have to spend almost like 10 hours every day during the weekday in the job area. So for this SWOT analysis, how can I help you to be a better lawyer? Okay, and another thing I'm always intrigued, because I'm sorry I was not here last time, I was already intrigued, how do you encourage the youth by highlighting what kind of contribution a lawyer can really help the people, help the company, and help the society? I'm really intrigued in that, because a lot of misunderstanding, misperceptions, oh, lawyers, I'll just set a lot of rule, bureaucracy, slow down everything. So how do you, how do you give it all the use understanding of that? And some of them maybe have a very good talent to be a good lawyer, but they need to get encouraged by you. Right?
Yeah, that's a great point, because there are views of what are lawyers and what do lawyers do. And sometimes people will see, maybe they watch a TV show and say, oh, all these lawyers are very fancy and rich and they're just money grubbing, or they're very tricky. Yeah. And then when I think about, let's step away from the TV show, looking at reality, how do people like in a corporate environment tend to view lawyers? And we hear this at work conferences all the time. It tends to be, like you said, they set up a bunch of rules. They make things very slow. It's a bureaucratic thing, they're the ones who say no all the time. They don't want us to do stuff. So what is it really? What is it all about? Well, what are lawyers taught in school, and what are we supposed to be held to by our standards? We're supposed to represent our client. We're supposed to work for the client that has hired us, in a sense. So for attorneys that litigate, that go into court, maybe it's criminal, maybe it's civil, your sole responsibility is to work in the best interest of that person you're representing. Yes, it is true. Some people might take that overboard. Some people might be too aggressive, very aggressive, or they might just be, I'm working in the best interest of my client, which means get all the money possible. And they might take some odd steps there. But that doesn't have to be every attorney. That doesn't have to be you if you're thinking about going down that path. You can still pursue representing your client well, but doing so in fairness in the system, and doing that with the mind that even while you're representing your client to the best of your ability, there is someone on the other side, and they are also having their own issues and their own feelings about it. So I believe you can still be civil and kind while you're doing that work. In my aspect, in the corporate aspect, our client is a company. The company has hired me, and they are the only person, the only entity that I am looking to serve. So what's in the best interest of the company? It's really about protecting the company's business. We put up a bunch of rules because we want to make sure the company is following those rules. We don't want the company to get in trouble with government regulations or with other customers or suppliers. And we want to make sure that they are doing everything by the book. We say we are protecting their potential profits, protecting their business by mitigating the risk involved. And you saw one of my weaknesses that I identified is I feel like personally I might be a little risk averse, but that's actually a characteristic you'll find amongst attorneys in general. Attorneys tend to be risk averse. We want to minimize the chance that we are going to lose something big. And to do that, you will put up a bunch of rules, a lot of procedures. So for example, as part of my work, a lot of what I do is I read a lot of contracts, and I make sure that the contracts, the agreements, have the terms that protect our side to the best of our ability. And that might take time. That has to go through a bunch of people. I have to make sure the right people see it. I have to take the time to read it myself. If I see something that doesn't quite work for us, I have to say, hey, I don't think this is the right language here. And I've asked them to go back to the other side and talk about it. And that might take a while to go back and forth. And all the while, the business team is saying, why can't we just get this done? I want to get this deal done.
That's me.
That's me. Well, hold on, there's a few things here, and it might not even be obvious. Maybe it might not even come up now, but down the road, the attorney is thinking about what if this might happen later, and we want to be able to protect us down there. So that's kind of the job that we have. Now, you can think about, you might say, oh, well, then the lawyer always has to be right? Isn't that one of the threats I listed, like always being right? Well, being an attorney, you also do have to listen to your client, listen to what the client wants. The attorney is there to give legal advice. You are an advisor to your client. If the client ultimately decides to do something else, then you have to let them, because they are your boss, basically. So if I tell the company, or I tell the executives, hey, these things might be a little bit problematic, just in case down the road, maybe you want to close that hole. And let's say the company might say, oh, that's okay. Given this particular relationship, we don't think this is going to happen. We are going to be careful in controlling this communication. And, or they might say, this is a really big potential customer, a really big deal. The benefit outweighs the risk. They can make that decision, and then we will respect that as the attorney. And that's part of the communication process, being able to listen and understand. You don't want to fight with your client. You want to work together to come to the best possible solution. And part of that is, just a compromise. So if you are good at listening, if you are good at finding middle ground solutions, and you're okay with compromising, good at that communication and discussion, then yeah, that's definitely a path that can be good for someone. And there's, like I said, there's all sorts of people, all different paths. Don't let what you see on TV or what you hear online be the be all end all. Kind of see that for yourself.
So what is through many years as a lawyer or attorney, what the most rewarding part of the job for you, or most rewarding moment from your experience?
Yeah, I think the most rewarding part is just knowing that I was able to help someone work through a problem or a question. Part of what I had shared in my deeper background, why did I really end up going into law, was, and it's kind of the silly fun point, I liked explaining rules and systems to people. And I really found that through my love of games, actually. Every time you bring out a new game, people are going to say, how do you play this? And sometimes it's a very complicated set of rules. And I really found that, hey, I was good at interpreting them. I really liked being able to help people learn and get them on board on the same page. And I thought to myself, that sounds kind of like what a lawyer does. Is that really true? And then so I went into it, I explored it, and in many senses it is. So I really love when I'm able to help people, and maybe in this case it's help a company, or to help the people in the company to really understand what is going on in a certain case. And when they come back, when they say, oh, thank you for helping us out here, thank you for figuring out, guiding us through this process, that's a great feeling.
Thank you. And then another question, probably this is a much bigger question. I know there's so many different fields for the lawyer to engage to that, right? Like a litigation lawyer, patent lawyer, tax lawyer, or corporate lawyer, so many different fields. Now, of course, there's a common strengths requirement. Then they have a unique specialized strengths requirement. Can you go through all this pretty quick?
Yeah. Well,
it's like an oxymoron. Go through all of this pretty quick.
the common strength, and I think it's the thing that what everyone learns in law school, is just how to approach problems, how to think about things logically and analytically. Even when you're in law school, you have all these different classes, you have different areas of law, you have contract law, business law, property law, intellectual property, criminal, all these different things, so many different fields. It's kind of related to what you said. You can never learn all of those in school. You learn a lot of that while you're on the job. But the common thread, why do you go to school then, is no matter what the topic is, no matter what the subject matter is, how do you approach it? When you read the cases, when you read rules and regulations, how are you thinking about it? How are you breaking it down? How are you laying them out for yourself and for others? I'd say that would be the common thing. A lot of times, I think I've explained to people in the past, you don't necessarily go to law school and then suddenly become a logical thinking person. It kind of reinforces your natural mindset and how you approach it, which is why that's why you take the LSAT, to see if you are good at logic to go to law school. It helps reinforce the skill that you have there. So if you want to, for all our youth out there, if you are considering something like law, then start working on how do you look at problems? How do you think about how things connect together? And then play some, they actually call them logic games. On the LSAT, there's a section called logic games. It's just logical quizzes and problems like riddles. You might find them on YouTube. You can look up logic puzzles. Do some of those, and that will help you kind of start getting that thinking pattern. And then when you ask about, well, what's the specific unique skills? Well, those are the things you might learn in the class. You might pick up specifics about IP law, intellectual property, about the criminal system, but you really get those once you're in the work field. And that might be if you're interning for them as a student, or when you're a fresh graduate and you're coming in, they make you do a lot of research probably. You will pick up things through there for the most part, the most unique aspects of the skills.
Thank you. They have there's a question about the, like a lot of attorneys make a lot of money. So can you briefly tell everybody, say, what kind of attorney make the most money? And pro and con for that kind of job. It's a very practical, practical question for all the youth to think about. Pro and con about that job.
I'd say the attorneys that make the most money are those who go out and get hired by what they call big law. That means it's the biggest law firms out there. And there's a number of them, usually very well known and very highly publicized in law school as you're trying to do job placement, because obviously that's big name, big brand recognition. Those will probably make the most amount of money, potentially. I say you have to work your way up there and then you will make lots and lots of money. What's the downside? Well, especially in a big law firm, you have to put in a lot of time. There's no such thing as overtime because everything is overtime. You're there for your normal day, and then they expect you to stay, and they expect you to stay longer, and on the weekends, and always be on call. And you are required to what they call it billable hours. You have to report a number of hours you work for certain clients throughout the week, and they have a requirement, a number per week for that law firm. And then sometimes you're expected to even go over that requirement. So it's a huge strain on if you're trying to do work-life balance. Now, maybe you feel you're very young, you're coming out of school, you have nothing else to do, you're just going to pour it all into work. Great, then maybe that's for you. But for the most part, I have seen and I've heard it takes a huge toll on a lot of people. So definitely have that balance in mind when you're considering what your goal is. That's why I said one of my goals is always maintain a work-life balance, because at one of my previous work stops in the Illinois AG's office, while it wasn't a law firm environment and we didn't have billables, there was a lot of caseload. There were a lot of things going on all the time, and people felt pressured to have to put so much into it and to stay much later than they normally would have. And the subject matter that we were working with is also very difficult, and it would put a lot of emotional and mental strain on people. If they weren't careful, they would get the burnout, the burnout threat. So yeah, I think when you're looking for your next profession, of course, you're going to look at the salary and the money involved, but always keep in mind, what is the counterbalance? What do you have to do to get there? And that's something for each individual here to kind of weigh out for themselves, what is important to them.
Excellent.
Let me ask-
Hopefully, this is my last question about a
Okay.
lawyer. Then for the other side, there's another field, doesn't get paid too much, but feel very noble and very, what do you call this, beneficial to society as like a DA office. Okay, the judge. So how do you get into that field?
Oh, so that's like referring to like the public servants.
Okay, public service, yeah.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of people do want to go in there into those fields. A number of my friends in law school actually wanted to pursue that because a lot of that, like DA or public defender, they work for the city or they work for the state, they work for the government, basically. The pay is generally less, but they're feeling like they're doing their civic duty. And some might do it out of a strong sense of that duty. Maybe it's built up since you were young. Some of my friends, they really enjoyed it because they loved the aspect of criminal law. And a lot of these guys work specifically in criminal law area. And they just really enjoy the case law behind it. And maybe you want to put the bad people away, or maybe you want to defend the innocent person, but there are both sides to it. And if you do that long enough, then you might rise up, if it's your intention, rise up to be a judge, and you'd be the one overseeing all these proceedings. So if that's something that you're interested in, it's actually pretty easy because they're always looking for people to fill those roles to kind of enter into. And here's the great part. Even though a lot of them pay less because it's a government job, there's usually great benefits. And there's actually student loan forgiveness. I believe it's after you work 10 years in the public sector or the public government, then they will forgive your student loans if you're taking them out for law school. So I think some of my friends did that as well, took advantage of that. So yeah, that's one way to incentivize and make it easier to do some public good.
That's good.
Zach, there's a lot of movies about lawyers, and I know that all of our people here don't know about Perry Mason, but what movies that you could recommend to our young friends here that we watch it may inspire them or give a more accurate portrayal of what a lawyer is about?
That's a great question. I have to think about which lawyer
Which
movie
one
that
do
I've
you
actually
like?
watched.
Yeah.
I love
Lawyer.
the reference to Perry Mason and to Matlock. I watched those with my parents growing up. You know, there was one movie that everyone knew going into law school when we arrived on that first week. Everyone was talking about the movie called My Cousin Vinny. Have you heard of that one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I heard the name. I was like, I don't know this movie. Am I supposed to have? Was this required watching coming into this school? So eventually, we got a group of friends together. Okay, let's watch this movie because we're in law school now, so you might as well watch this famous attorney movie. And it was the first time I watched it, and it was really fun. And it's about just a small time lawyer who's trying to get his big case, and he goes and he represents some of his relatives down in the South, southern state, and he faces a lot of challenges looking at procedure. What's the procedure of the court? How does he have to please the judge? How is he actually supposed to present witnesses and evidence? And so I think in watching that, it was actually, it's a good representation of what you might face as a litigator in a court setting. And it's very funny, and it's people consider it a classic movie, so it must be good, at least as far as cinema goes. So I think I could recommend My Cousin Vinny as a fun one to watch. The issue is with a lot of media representation, it kind of goes over the top, right? Or they only show you the big law firms, people living the good life, wearing the very nice suits all the time, working in the high rises. And those people exist, but it's a relatively small percentage of attorneys who are out there. So I think a movie like that, which shows small-time lawyer out in the middle of the country, I think that's a good one to start with.
Thank you.
Wow, that was such a great way to understand from all different perspectives about the job, career, lawyer. Are there any questions from the audience? You can put in the chat, or you can open up your mic.
Yeah, you can unmute your microphone and ask Zach the question. If you have a passion to be a lawyer, yeah.
You never want to be an ambulance chaser, have you?
No. For those who are wondering, ambulance chaser kind of refers to those attorneys who purposely seek out those who have been in accidents, who have been injured, and then say, hey, I know you've been injured, but how would you like to sue the person who injured you, or sue the hospital or something? So they're chasing after those opportunities, and usually it's viewed negatively because it's kind of almost taking advantage of someone who's in a poor position. You're only using them for that job opportunity, as opposed to actually caring about them as a person. But myself, I've never had that thought about going to that kind of field.
No, the reason that I brought it up because being in medical career, we always have to our arch enemy is a malpractice lawyer. Yeah. So all my life that I have to watch out for it, and then my son turned into one. So.
Well, make sure you have the good attorney who is defending you as well.
Well, we always say that you have to exercise good judgment, and you keep a good record. Yeah. And you always communicate well with your patients. And so, yeah, so that's why. And to avoid a shyster, the best way is not to be a quack. Yeah. All right. That's for those young people here, that two SAT word. One is shyster, SHYSTER, and then the other one is charlatan, which is literally a fraud, a doctor, yeah, a medical doctor.
So I have a question for someone, for some youth has a lot of ambition to be a president, to be a governor. It's amazingly so many high-level politician or government officer are from a lawyer background. What do you think the reason?
Well, I think it's because a lot of them go in with the understanding of like governmental rules and regulations and kind of the broad perspective. And they probably went into that thinking, you know, probably in terms of civic duty, or it helps you build a big name. If you start being an attorney and you start working your way through those ranks, you start getting your name known in the city. And you know, part of being a politician is just being popular, right? So people just know your name and they know who you are, and that kind of helps in that progression. Or a lot of times, I think people will, if they work long enough, maybe just as purely a lawyer in that, especially in the criminal field, you'll start seeing things about the system, about the way things are run overall, and then maybe you have a desire to change that from there, and then that leads you to take the next step into politics. So yeah, I think there could be a number of reasons that kind of go into that route.
And do you think during the law school education, it build up your capability for communication, you know, crystal clear thinking, logical analysis, debate, you know, all those are very important to be a very successful politician. And sometimes even the charisma, not necessarily characteristic, but charisma.
Yeah, I think there are absolutely opportunities in school, because in school you have to do basic advocacy classes. It just basically teach you the basic of what does it mean to go and make your argument, to get up in front of people and talk. Sometimes there is what they call moot court, you know, like kind of a fake court setting where they will play out a trial and you have to kind of go through the steps yourself, and then you have to get up and do it and convince your peers or the judges that come in. They have different competitions that kind of revolve around that practical aspect. Yeah, and of course, I'm sure the kids even know, even in schools, you have like student council, you know, people running for positions. Same thing exists in law school too. You have the law school council, and then the students will run, and you have to see the people with charisma, those who are popular. And as you get those opportunities, as you're doing more of those, maybe you're doing internships, yeah, you're going to build up on those skills for sure.
Excellent, yeah.
One more question for you. For our young people here, that what are some of the majors that they could choose that would prepare them if they want to go into law?
Yeah, that's a great question, because honestly, it's any major could go into law, right? I saw so many different varieties from all my classmates, and I myself, being an economics major, is really uncommon, but it could come from anywhere, because it's not necessarily about what you studied or what you know. Like I said, it's about how you think and how you approach things. That being said, I will tell you that I think a lot of people, some of my friends, came from majors such as philosophy. I think philosophy was a big one, because they're used to thinking very deeply and arguing a lot. Philosophy or history, I found a lot of people came from there. And this is a kind of a unique aspect, a specific part. If you are very strong in STEM and you come from a science background, and maybe you go on and you study a science major, then you might be thinking about doing intellectual property law, which is a specific field that deals with inventions and development of patents, trademarks, copyrights. actually, in order to do certain things, and in order to work specifically with patents in the legal field, you must have a science background. So that's a more unique aspect of it. Actually, myself, I was very interested in studying IP, and I actually took a lot of the IP classes when I was in law school. But because I didn't come from a science background, I didn't qualify for the what they call the patent bar to actually become a patent attorney. But I did learn a lot about those aspects and about the trademarks and copyrights, and that's helps me better represent actually at least the company now in those aspects, having an understanding there. So yeah, so you can really go in and study anything, but if someone for some reason has a very strong interest in working with inventions, you know, working with those inventors who are making great new things, taking the next step, then they would consider doing a science-related major in college.
I want to make a comment. Okay. What impressed me the most is the United States was built on the foundation of law. Okay. Everything's about law. So when the Bush and then the Gore, okay, had the election count all the way to just a few hundred votes difference, suddenly you got a federal law and you got a state law, you got a city law. Everybody follow the law. Okay, no argument. So they follow the law, they follow the procedure, and they follow the sequence of the law, hierarchy of the law. Who's override the other one, who's override the other one. Eventually, it's okay, only a few hundred votes different, but the whole country accepted. That's how it is. Florida, you know, the local county. And that's impressed me the most, because in the other country, without a good foundation of law and the good habit of obey the law, this country already in the big chaos. Okay, people just shot at each other, all the like row coming. But in the United States, they just wait and wait until the last minute, few hundred vote difference, and make the President Bush as the president. That impressed me so much. So law is a foundation for a good country. Yeah.
I think that's a great point. And that ties into my own belief about, you know, be responsible and take ownership for your actions and the consequences of your action. You know, if we've agreed to have this set of laws, it's been established. And by agree, I mean we haven't worked to change them. Then we should go through those processes and we should accept the outcome of what the law has prescribed. So like that case that you referenced, going through all the different case law at the state, federal level, and people accepted the outcome. I think that is the right way it should be done, because you set something up, you're committed to it, and you take ownership of the results. You know, this is what we've agreed to. If you're not happy with it, then let's work through a process to change it. You know, we can amend the laws. There are processes for that, and then you can see how it comes out again the next time. But for now, this is what we established. This is what everyone's agreed to in a sense. So take that, right?
Yeah, you follow the law. Another interesting point I like to make. It's really interesting. Okay, I find out in the American legal system, eventually, on the critical case, common people like you and me make the decision. That's what the jury is all about. So once I have a patent argument with the other company, so they have to go through the legal issue. So I asked my patent lawyer, say, wait a minute, we are the technical expert on this thing. And we couldn't even agree with each other which one is right or which is wrong. Now, how can the 13 people have no idea, no technical background, make the decision, say which one is right, which one is wrong? He said, that's the point. If you two cannot agree, let other people make decisions. That's amazed me. You know? So when you take the jury, they don't know nothing what they're talking about. But the lawyer, litigation lawyer, had to convert it into the common language and add all the emotion, communication skill to convince a jury, say, hey, I'm right. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and that's the system we've agreed to. You know, if two parties can't come to the conclusion one way or the other, you give it to someone else, to the third party, whether it's a judge or a jury of your peers, as we call it, let them decide. And I think a really a really easy analogy for people to understand might be, hey, let's decide where to go for lunch. I want to go to this place. You want to go to this place. We can't really decide, and we can't convince each other. Okay, let the rest of the group decide, and then just accept the outcome, right? No complaining about it.
That's right.
Zach, just one last question for me, the biblical, but take it with humor first, okay? The First Corinthian in the Bible says that we are not to trust lawyers, and Christians are not supposed to go seek lawyers, because it says, suppose one of you bring a charge against another, should you take the ungodly people to be judged? And you were supposed to just kind of, if somebody take advantage of you, that you're supposed to just swallow your pride. So are we supposed to fend up for ourselves and find a lawyer, or biblically?
We definitely circled that when I read it. I was like, what? Yeah, I've always read that and similarly related passages kind of reference to that kind of idea as speaking to how should we be approaching one another generally, and how should we be relating with one another? How should we treat one another? Our goal shouldn't be to go after one another. It shouldn't be to seek out revenge or have to get even. Our steps should be to come together in a sense of love and kindness, and that might be difficult, but that's kind of the point of these instructions, is that it's very easy to jump into dragging in litigators, lawyers in a sense. It's much harder to come together in a peaceful solution. So I've always viewed it as that, as not condemning lawyers per se, but encouraging us in how we should be approaching our